Chapter 1. Enemies at War. The battlefield stretched across the surface of Kelluron. 7. A barren planet scarred by centuries of conflict. Jagged cliffs loomed on the horizon, casting long shadows over the fractured landscape. The air crackled with energy from weapon discharges, and the ground was littered with the remnants of machines and soldiers alike. For Captain Adrian Cross, it was just another war zone, though the stakes had never been higher. Adrian crouched behind a half-destroyed wall of an abandoned outpost, his pulse rifle gripped tightly in his hands. The helmet of his combat suit displayed a holographic interface, highlighting enemy positions on the other side of the ridge. His squad was nearby, their chatter echoing through his comms. "Captain, we've located the tech cache," said Sergeant Mia Renner, her voice steady despite the chaos. "It's deeper inside the facility, but the Virelians are guarding it heavily." Adrian's jaw tightened. The stolen quantum resonator wasn't just another piece of tech, it was humanity's key to stabilizing their colonies on the edge of the galaxy. Losing it to the Virelian Empire, humanity's fiercest rival, could tip the balance of power in a war that had raged for decades. "Understood," Adrian replied. "Hold position. I'm moving up." He signaled to his squad to stay put, then slipped out of cover, his movements swift and precise. The Virelian defenders were skilled, their sharp reflexes and advanced tech making them formidable opponents. But Adrian had faced worse. As he climbed the ridge, his HUD flashed red, warning of an incoming projectile. He dived just in time, a plasma bolt scorching the ground where he had been. He rolled to his feet, his rifle snapping up, and fired at the source. A Virelian soldier fell, their sleek, insectoid armor sparking as they crumpled. But the skirmish had drawn attention. A series of clicks and hisses Virelian battle signals echoed through the air. Adrian's grip tightened on his rifle. The situation was about to get worse. The encounter. Inside the facility, Kalira, a Virelian elite warrior, moved with deadly precision. Her four arms, each covered in shimmering blue armor, worked seamlessly as she issued commands and coordinated her forces. The Virelians were taller and more agile than humans, their exoskeletal bodies adapted for speed and strength. Kalira was one of their best, a fact she had proven time and again on the battlefield. "They're moving in from the southern perimeter," Kalira hissed to her squad, her sharp mandibles clicking as she spoke. "Hold the line and reinforce the main chamber. The resonator must not fall into human hands." Her soldiers obeyed without hesitation. To the Virelian Empire, failure was unacceptable. Kalira had spent her life fighting for the survival of her people, and she would die before letting the humans claim victory. As she moved toward the cache's central chamber, a faint sound caught her attention. Footsteps. Human footsteps. She paused, her clawed hands tightening around her energy spear. Then she saw him, a human soldier moving through the shadows, his rifle scanning the area. Kalira's mandibles curled into a snarl. She lunged, her spear striking with precision. Adrian barely dodged the attack, the spear's energy crackling inches from his armor. He turned and fired, his pulse rifle blazing. Kalira deflected the shots with her spear, her movements almost too fast to track. The clash was brutal. Adrian relied on his training and ingenuity, while Kalira used her speed and natural agility to keep him on the defensive. Sparks flew as their weapons collided, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. "You don't belong here, human," Kalira hissed, her voice laced with venom. Adrian gritted his teeth. "Neither do you." A desperate gamble. The fight pushed them deeper into the facility, their focus narrowing to each other. Adrian's squad called for updates, but he was too preoccupied to respond. Kalira's spear grazed his shoulder, the impact sending a jolt of pain through his body. "You're persistent," Kalira said, her tone almost amused. "Comes with the job," Adrian shot back, ducking under her next strike. As their battle raged on, the facility's automated systems activated. A red light bathed the chamber, and a voice in an alien language echoed through the halls. Adrian didn't understand the words, but the meaning was clear. Self-defense protocols engaged. A blast of energy erupted between them, throwing Adrian and Kalira across the room. Adrian's vision blurred as he hit the ground, his helmet cracking. Kalira was similarly dazed, her spear clattering to the floor. Before either could recover, mechanical arms descended from the ceiling. They latched onto Adrian and Kalira, dragging them into a circular chamber. The walls shimmered with faint light, and the air hummed with energy. Adrian's HUD flickered. What the hell is this? Kalira struggled against the restraints, her mandibles clicking in alarm. A healing pod, she growled. It's designed to stabilize injured combatants. Adrian frowned. Why would the Virelians program it to take both of us? Kalira's eyes narrowed. They didn't. The pod systems activated, flooding the chamber with a warm, golden light. Adrian felt a strange sensation, like 1,000 tiny threads weaving through his body. Pain faded, replaced by an overwhelming sense of connection. His eyes widened as images flashed through his mind, memories that weren't his own. A young Virelian child training with her spear. A battle on a distant moon. A moment of quiet, staring at a starry sky. Kalira's voice echoed in his thoughts. What is this? What are you doing? Adrian stared at her, realization dawning. It's not just healing us. It's linking us. Kalira's mandibles twitched, her usual composure breaking. That's impossible. But it wasn't. The pod's alien technology was doing something neither of them could have anticipated. Their minds, their emotions, their very beings were becoming intertwined. The aftermath. When the pod finally released them, Adrian and Kalira collapsed to the floor, gasping for air. The connection lingered, faint but undeniable. Adrian could feel Kalira's confusion, her anger, and something deeper, a fear she refused to acknowledge. What the hell did that thing do to us? Adrian muttered, rubbing his temples. Kalira glared at him, her mandibles clicking. It bonded us. A Virelian bond is rare. Sacred. It was never meant to happen with an outsider. Adrian shook his head. Well, it just did. So what now? Kalira stood, her spear in hand. Now, we leave this place. Together. Adrian raised an eyebrow. Together? You were trying to kill me 5 minutes ago. And you were trying to steal from my people, Kalira shot back. But if the bond is real, we don't have a choice. Our survival is now tied to each other. Adrian hesitated, his instinct screaming at him not to trust her. But as he looked into her eyes, he felt her determination, her belief that this was the only way forward. All right, he said finally. Truce. But if you turn on me, you'll never see it coming, Kalira interrupted, her mandibles curling into a faint smile. Together, they left the facility, their bond forging a fragile alliance in the heart of a war-torn galaxy. Chapter 2. The Bond Awakens. The barren wasteland of Kelluron, 7 stretched endlessly as Adrian Cross and Kalira made their way out of the Virelian facility. The fractured ground beneath them radiated heat from fissures, leaking molten minerals, while the air above shimmered with the aftermath of battle. Adrian's combat suit was scorched, his rifle slung across his back. Kalira, spear in hand, moved with precision, her sharp gaze scanning the horizon. The uneasy silence between them was shattered by the bond lingering in their minds. Adrian couldn't shake the strange sensation that had taken root, a faint hum of thoughts and emotions that weren't his own. He felt Kalira's frustration, her distrust, and something deeper, a faint flicker of curiosity. Stop that, Kalira hissed, glancing over her shoulder at him. Adrian frowned. Stop what? Probing my thoughts. I'm not probing anything, Adrian shot back. You're the one projecting. Kalira's mandibles clicked in annoyance. This bond is unnatural. I refuse to let it distract me. Yeah, well, it's distracting me plenty, Adrian muttered. And for the record, I didn't sign up for this either. A shared burden. They found temporary shelter in the shadow of a jagged cliff, its overhang shielding them from the planet's searing winds. Adrian set his rifle down and sank to the ground, exhaustion pressing heavily on him. Kalira remained standing, her spear planted firmly in the dirt as she kept watch. Adrian rubbed his temples, the dull ache of the bond thrumming in his mind. We need to talk about this, he said. Whatever the hell that pod did to us, it's not going away. Kalira's gaze remained fixed on the horizon. Virelian bonds are sacred. They are meant to be shared between our closest kin or mates, not enemies. Adrian froze, her words hitting like a plasma bolt. Wait, are you saying this thing is permanent? Kalira finally turned to face him, her expression grim. I don't know. Bonding is rare, even among my people. It is said to forge a connection deeper than thought or feeling, one that transcends physical existence. To share it with a human is unprecedented. Adrian let out a sharp laugh, though there was no humor in it. Great. Just great. Out of all the aliens in the galaxy, I get stuck with you. Kalira bristled, her mandibles flaring. And I with you. Believe me, human, I do not relish this any more than you do. The bond's power. As the hours passed, Adrian began to notice changes. His movements felt sharper, his senses keener. He could hear the faint crackle of distant energy discharges and smell the mineral tang of the planet's atmosphere more acutely than ever before. It was as though Kalira's heightened Virilian physiology was bleeding into his own. Is it just me? Adrian began cautiously. Or am I changing? Kalira's gaze snapped to him, her mandibles twitching in alarm. You are feeling the bond. Yeah, no kidding, Adrian said, holding up a hand that trembled faintly. I think it's enhancing me or maybe just messing with me. Kalira tilted her head, studying him. Virilian bonds are said to share strengths as well as weaknesses. If you are truly feeling its effects, it means we are connected in ways I did not think possible. Adrian met her gaze, unease twisting in his gut. And you? Are you feeling anything from me? Kalira hesitated before nodding. Your thoughts are chaotic. Your emotions, overwhelming. It is like standing in the eye of a storm. Adrian gave her a wry smile. Welcome to being human. An unexpected connection. That night, they camped in a shallow cave carved into the cliffside. Adrian tended to a small fire, the flames casting flickering shadows on the rocky walls. Kalira sat a short distance away, her spear resting across her lap. The silence between them was heavy, but the bond hummed softly, a constant reminder of their shared connection. Adrian finally broke the silence. What's it like, being bonded to someone in your culture? Kalira's mandibles clicked softly as she considered his question. It is intimate. To bond is to share one's essence with another, to be forever linked. It is not something we do lightly. And now you're stuck with me, Adrian said, his tone light but his expression serious. Kalira's gaze softened slightly. You are not what I expected, human. On the battlefield, you were relentless, fierce. Yet here, you show kindness, even humor. It is confusing. Adrian shrugged. War makes monsters out of everyone. Off the battlefield, I'm just a guy trying to get by. Kalira tilted her head. Perhaps you are not so different from us after all. For a moment, the bond between them pulsed gently, a sense of mutual understanding passing between them. Adrian felt a flicker of Kalira's past, her relentless training, her struggles to prove herself, her deep loyalty to her people. And Kalira, in turn, glimpsed Adrian's memories of loss, of camaraderie, of the burden of command. The enemy's shadow. Their fragile peace was shattered by the sound of approaching footsteps. Adrian sprang to his feet, his rifle at the ready, while Kalira gripped her spear tightly. The bond thrummed with tension as they exchanged a glance. Virilians, Kalira said, her voice low. A patrol. Adrian cursed under his breath. Can you talk them down? Kalira's mandibles flared. They will not listen. They will see you as a threat, and me as a traitor for being with you. Great, Adrian muttered. Any ideas? Kalira's gaze flicked to the narrow entrance of the cave. We ambush them. Use the terrain to our advantage. Adrian nodded, moving into position. As the patrol drew closer, he felt the bond sharpen his senses, his reflexes quicker than ever before. He could feel Kalira's focus, her instincts guiding his movements. The first Virilian stepped into the cave, its weapon raised. Adrian fired before it could react, the shot hitting its mark. Kalira lunged at the second, her spear slicing through its armor with deadly precision. The skirmish was over in seconds, the patrol defeated. Adrian leaned against the wall, catching his breath. That was intense. Kalira wiped her spear clean, her expression unreadable. The bond is strengthening. We are becoming attuned. Adrian met her gaze, a mix of fear and fascination in his eyes. What happens if it keeps getting stronger? Kalira didn't answer, but the bond thrummed between them, a silent promise that whatever came next, they would face it together. Chapter 3. The escape? The morning on Kelluron. 7 was eerily silent, the oppressive heat of the day already beginning to rise. Adrian Cross and Kalira made their way cautiously through the jagged terrain, their movements quick and purposeful. The aftermath of their battle with the Virelian patrol lay behind them, but the sense of danger was ever present. Both knew reinforcements would soon come, and they would be outnumbered. Adrian's combat suit had powered down, its systems overtaxed from the prolonged conflict. The armor now felt like dead weight on his shoulders. Kalira, ever vigilant, moved ahead of him, her spear ready and her sharp gaze scanning the horizon. The bond between them thrummed faintly, a constant reminder of their fragile alliance. "How far is the next extraction point?" Kalira asked, her voice clipped. Adrian checked the damaged display on his wrist gauntlet, tapping it until it flickered to life. "About 20 kilometers north. There's an abandoned outpost. If we can reach it, I can call for a pickup." Kalira's mandibles clicked softly. "If the Virelians haven't already seized it." Adrian sighed. "Let's hope your people are as overconfident as they usually are." Kalira shot him a glare but said nothing. The bond carried a faint echo of her irritation, and Adrian couldn't help but smirk. The treacherous path. The terrain became increasingly unforgiving as they pressed forward. The ground was fractured, with deep chasms cutting through the landscape, forcing them to take longer, more dangerous routes. Volcanic vents spewed plumes of toxic gas into the air, their acrid smell burning Adrian's throat. "We need to move faster," Kalira said, her tone urgent. "The Virelians will be tracking us." "I'm doing my best," Adrian replied, wiping sweat from his brow. "Not all of us have 4 legs and boundless energy." Kalira paused, turning to him with a faint smirk. "You're surprisingly resilient for a human. I expected you to collapse hours ago." "Thanks for the vote of confidence," Adrian muttered, though he felt a flicker of amusement from her through the bond. As they climbed a steep ridge, Adrian's foot slipped on loose gravel. He stumbled, nearly falling into a chasm below, but Kalira's hand shot out, grabbing his arm and pulling him back to safety. "You're clumsy too," she said, though there was no malice in her tone. Adrian nodded, catching his breath. "Yeah, well, I didn't exactly train for this kind of terrain." The bond pulsed softly between them, a wave of mutual understanding passing through. They were beginning to rely on each other in ways neither had anticipated. A sudden ambush. As they reached the top of the ridge, the sound of approaching footsteps brought both of them to a halt. Adrian and Kalira dropped into cover, their weapons at the ready. A group of Virelian soldiers appeared, their sleek armor glinting in the sunlight. They moved with military precision, scanning the area with energy rifles raised. "Looks like they've caught up to us," Adrian whispered. Kalira nodded, her mandibles twitching. "We'll have to take them out quickly. They can't be allowed to report our location." Adrian raised an eyebrow. "And how do you suggest we do that?" Kalira glanced at him, the bond carrying a faint trace of confidence. "Follow my lead." Before Adrian could protest, Kalira leapt from their hiding spot, her spear striking with lethal precision. The first Virelian soldier fell before it could react, its armor sparking as it crumpled to the ground. Adrian fired his rifle, taking out a second soldier as Kalira engaged the remaining 2 in close combat. The fight was brutal but swift. Kalira's agility and strength were unmatched, her movements a blur as she dispatched her opponents. Adrian provided cover fire, his shots precise and calculated. When the last soldier fell, Adrian leaned against a nearby rock, catching his breath. "Remind me not to get on your bad side." Kalira smirked, wiping her spear clean. "You wouldn't last long." Adrian couldn't help but chuckle. Despite the danger, he felt an odd sense of camaraderie with the Virelian warrior. The bond deepens. As they continued their journey, the bond between them grew stronger. Adrian found himself experiencing brief flashes of Kalira's memories, her rigorous training as a warrior, the pressure of living up to her people's expectations, and the deep sense of duty that drove her. Kalira, in turn, felt the weight of Adrian's past. The friends he had lost in battle, the guilt he carried for the decisions he had made, and the quiet determination that kept him going. "This bond," Kalira said after a long silence, "it is overwhelming." "You're telling me," Adrian replied. "It's like having someone rummage around in your head 24/7. Kalira tilted her head, studying him. And yet, I am beginning to understand you. Your people. You are not as different as I once believed. Adrian nodded slowly. Same here. You're not just some mindless soldier. You care about your people, even if I don't agree with their methods. The bond pulsed faintly, a sense of mutual respect passing between them. Reaching the outpost. By nightfall, they reached the abandoned outpost. The structure was crumbling, its walls covered in scorch marks from a long-forgotten battle. Adrian's gauntlet beeped faintly as it connected to the outpost communication system. "This is Captain Adrian Cross of the Terran Alliance," he said, activating the transmitter. "Requesting emergency extraction. Hostile forces in the area." Static filled the air before a voice replied. "Acknowledged, Captain. Extraction team en route. ETA, 2 hours." Adrian sighed in relief. "We've got a ride." Kalira's mandibles twitched. "And 2 hours to survive." As they fortified their position, Adrian felt the bond hum with a new intensity. He glanced at Kalira, who seemed equally aware of the growing connection. "We make a good team," he said, surprising himself with the admission. Kalira nodded. "Perhaps. But do not think this changes the fact that we are enemies." "Sure," Adrian said with a smirk. "Whatever you say." The bond pulsed again, this time carrying a faint sense of amusement from Kalira. For the first time, Adrian felt that they might just make it out of this alive together. Chapter 4. A Fragile Alliance. The wind howled through the crumbling walls of the abandoned outpost, carrying with it the faint metallic tang of distant plasma fire. Adrian Cross and Kalira worked in tense silence, fortifying their position against an inevitable assault. The extraction team was still nearly 2 hours away, and both of them knew that the Virelians wouldn't give them that much time without a fight. Kalira drove her spear into the ground beside her, her mandibles twitching with frustration. "Your extraction team had better be as efficient as you claim, human." Adrian smirked as he finished rigging a crude explosive using parts scavenged from the outpost remnants. "Trust me, Terran extraction crews don't leave anyone behind. Just keep the enemy busy, and I'll handle the surprises." Kalira tilted her head, her glowing eyes narrowing. "I've learned that surprises with humans are unpredictable. Unpredictable is what keeps us alive," Adrian quipped. "You should try it sometime." The faint pulse of their bond hummed between them, carrying traces of Kalira's skepticism mingled with a grudging respect. Adrian felt the edges of her emotions brushing against his own, an unsettling mix of tension, resolve, and something he couldn't quite name. The Virelian assault. It wasn't long before the sound of marching feet echoed through the rocky canyons surrounding the outpost. Adrian climbed to an elevated position, his rifle slung across his back as he peered through the scope. A squad of at least a dozen Virelian soldiers approached, their sleek, insectoid armor shimmering in the moonlight. "They're coming," Adrian muttered into his comms. Kalira stood near the central barricade, her spear glinting faintly. "Let them. This ends here." Adrian couldn't help but chuckle. "You really have a flair for the dramatic, don't you?" Kalira didn't reply, but he felt a flicker of amusement through the bond. Whatever else she was, Kalira wasn't as cold and detached as she tried to appear. The first wave of Virelians opened fire, their plasma rifles lighting up the night. Adrian ducked behind cover, returning fire with calculated precision. Kalira moved like a blur, her spear striking with deadly efficiency. The two of them fought as one, their movements strangely synchronized. It was as though the bond between them extended to the battlefield, guiding their actions. Adrian fired off a shot that hit a Virelian soldier square in the chest, sending them sprawling. "Left flank, Kalira." Kalira spun, her spear deflecting an incoming plasma bolt before striking down another enemy. "I see it. Focus on the ridge, they're trying to outflank us." The bond pulsed again, sharper this time. Adrian felt a surge of adrenaline that wasn't entirely his own. It was Kalira's focus, her determination bleeding into him, sharpening his aim and quickening his reflexes. A turning point. As the battle raged on, the Virelian forces began to press harder, their numbers seemingly endless. Adrian's makeshift explosives slowed them down, but it was clear that they couldn't hold the outpost forever. "We're running out of time," Adrian said, ducking behind cover as a plasma bolt narrowly missed him. Where's that extraction team? Kalira glanced at him, her mandibles twitching. If they don't arrive soon, we won't have a chance to use them. Adrian felt the bond thrum with her urgency, amplifying his own. Then we make one. Cover me. Kalira hesitated for only a fraction of a second before nodding. Do not die, human. It would be inconvenient. Adrian smirked. I'll do my best. He sprinted toward the central barricade, drawing the enemy's attention. Plasma bolts streaked past him, but Kalira's precise strikes kept the Virelians at bay. Reaching the exposed section of the outpost, Adrian triggered the last of his explosives, creating a massive shockwave that sent the enemy forces scrambling for cover. The bond tested. The explosion bought them a brief reprieve, but Adrian's suit warned of an incoming energy signature, one far more powerful than anything they'd faced so far. What now? Kalira asked, her voice tense. Adrian checked his scanner, his stomach sinking. Heavy infantry. Looks like your people brought out the big guns. From the shadows emerged a towering Virelian soldier encased in advanced armor, its energy shields glowing ominously. The massive figure carried a plasma cannon that could obliterate the entire outpost in a single shot. Kalira's mandibles flared. That is a Thalrock. Only the most elite warriors of my people are given such armor. Great, Adrian muttered. Any chance you can talk him out of it? Kalira shook her head. Thalrocks do not negotiate. The Thalrock fired, its plasma cannon sending a wave of destruction toward the barricade. Adrian and Kalira dove for cover, the blast obliterating everything in its path. We can't fight that thing head-on, Adrian said, his voice tight. Kalira glanced at him, her mandibles twitching. Then we do not fight it head-on. Through the bond, Adrian felt her plan forming a bold, dangerous maneuver that relied on their newfound connection. He nodded, the unspoken understanding passing between them like an electric current. Let's do it, he said. The final stand. Kalira charged toward the Thalrock, her spear crackling with energy. The massive Virelian turned its cannon on her, but Adrian fired a precise shot, striking the weapon's energy core and forcing it to overheat. The Thalrock stumbled, momentarily disoriented. Kalira seized the opportunity, leaping onto the Thalrock's back and driving her spear into a vulnerable joint in its armor. The Thalrock roared in pain, its massive frame swaying as it tried to shake her off. Adrian moved in, firing shot after shot to weaken the armor further. The bond between them surged, their actions perfectly coordinated as they brought the massive enemy to its knees. With a final, powerful strike, Kalira plunged her spear into the Thalrock's core, the energy discharge obliterating the massive figure. The explosion sent her flying, but Adrian was there to catch her, the two of them collapsing to the ground in a heap. For a moment, there was only silence. Extraction and reflection. The roar of an approaching Terran dropship broke the quiet. Adrian and Kalira watched as the extraction team descended, their weapons at the ready. The Virelian reinforcements retreated, unwilling to face the combined forces of Terrans and their own defeated elite. Adrian helped Kalira to her feet, the bond between them humming softly. Looks like we made it. Kalira nodded, her expression unreadable. For now, as they boarded the dropship, the tension between them lingered. They were still enemies, bound by something neither of them fully understood. Yet, as the ship lifted off, Adrian felt a flicker of something unexpected through the bond. Hope. Epilogue, a fragile alliance. Back aboard a Terran Alliance station, Adrian and Kalira were placed in separate quarters, monitored closely by their respective factions. The bond, however, remained unbroken, a constant presence in their minds. Adrian stared out at the stars, his thoughts drifting. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing. His connection with Kalira had changed him and her forever. Somewhere, Kalira felt the same, the bond carrying a shared understanding.